Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I want to talk to you guys about something really important. This is something I covered in the Q&As this week, but I felt like this also really deserves its own video. And let's kind of break it down a little bit. But stress, and I mean severe stress, large amounts of stress will kill your gains in the gym more than anything else in your life. And we know that stress itself is a killer. Stress kills particularly men. It affects women too, but we know from the statistics, stress kills men early. If you have a really high stress life, a really high stress job, you will die much sooner than other men as a result of it. So it can actually kill your body, not just your gains. So it's important to remember that. It's important for us to think about that and to mitigate our stress the best we can. Now, fortunately, weightlifting and training itself can actually help reduce stress, but in some cases, it can actually make it worse. But it can be therapeutic. It can release endorphins. It can release tension, and that can actually bring your stress levels lower. It can bring your cortisol levels down. But when you're going through a really stressful time in your life, and we are all going to hit really stressful times in your life, and a lot of guys are like, those things wouldn't affect my gains much. I'm like, yes, they will. You haven't experienced them in the middle of serious training, or you would understand this. Things like breakups. Even entering a new relationship sometimes can be really stressful as well, but breakups, absolutely tremendous. You guys have seen me go through that, and everyone was saying, man, you look like you've lost like 20 pounds of muscle. And I pretty much did. Going through my whole separation, divorce, all that stuff over a year ago. Gosh, it was a year and a half ago now. It tremendously affected my gains, and everyone could see it. It was like very obvious to the viewers. So that's one example. Change in career or a really stressful time period in your job, a really stressful job. Some people just have stressful careers and jobs, and that is going to influence your progress in the gym and the way that you train. Death in the family, like losing someone really close to you, that one is enormous. Like your mother or father or brother or sister dying, who you are really close to, will absolutely destroy your gains in the gym. And there's a number of reasons that these things do this. Number one, straight up the cortisol release, the actual stress hormones themselves, large amounts of cortisol. And it's one thing to have a little bit. We know that cortisol bursts right after you train is actually anabolic. It has been shown to be correlated with more muscle gains. The more cortisol you release during the training can produce slightly better muscle protein synthesis in the hours following it. But continually elevated cortisol that lasts for a full day, a week, a month, that will absolutely start breaking muscle tissue down, because that's what happens when you train. The cortisol starts breaking down proteins. It starts turning proteins into carbohydrates, releasing them as glucose into the bloodstream. So what happens, your body then responds with a larger anabolic response back. It's not actual tearing of the fibers. It's a chemical process by which it's just breaking down the protein bonds themselves. It's not the tension that people are thinking of with the tearing. It is a hormonal response. But it is a breakdown of the tissue proteins and turning them into glucose and nitrogen. When you experience that for prolonged periods of time, think about it. You're going to experience a larger amount of protein degradation, of muscle tissue being broken down for fuel by hormones in your body. So as you can imagine, that is going to impede your gains in the gym. And cortisol is going to reduce your recovery, which means you're going to recover slower from your training. You're going to break down more muscle tissue that isn't going to regenerate over the course of days or weeks. And that's really going to affect your gains. Like if you're going through a lot of stress and your cortisol levels are elevated, if you don't bring your training volume back down and your training intensity back down to a reasonable level, you are not going to recover from it. And you're going to start breaking muscle tissue down even faster. You're going to start losing strength. You're going to start losing muscle as a result of a really elevated high stress environment. The other things that it can do, it can absolutely mess with your diet. People, when they're really stressed, a lot of people eat more. A lot of people eat less. If you're eating less, you're going to lose muscle. You start eating more and you're trying to maintain a certain body composition, you're going to start gaining fat because you're not going to be recovering as well. So you're not going to be gaining as much muscle, so it's going to turn into a bulk that's not putting muscle on you. Very undesirable. And then thirdly, it can mess with your sleep patterns. Stress can absolutely destroy many people's ability to sleep. If you can't sleep, you don't recover and you don't grow. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're absolutely screwed with your results in the gym. So it's important for people who are going through any of these really stressful situations to come in and train. The last thing you want to do is stop training, because that's going to be devastating. Because if you're used to training, you're used to using training as a form of therapy to cope with stress, your stress levels are going to go up even higher. But it's important for people who are going through a lot of stress to make sure that they regulate their training volume. They understand they may not be able to train as hard and recover from it as usual, so they might need to scale it back a little bit, but they need to keep doing it to get the stress levels back in check. It's going to be very important that if you are an undereater when you're stressed, if you want to keep your gains, you need to remember to eat, and you got to regulate your binge eating. You're going to have to avoid the junk food and stuff like that and eat more filling foods if you're an overeater when you're stressed out. Otherwise, you're going to overeat, you're going to get fat. And it is very, very important that you make sure you sleep. And if you have to take a Benadryl or a melatonin or even a glass of wine to help you fall asleep at night if you're stressed, then you need to do that in order to make sure that you get enough sleep. Because if you're not sleeping enough and you're going through very high stress periods of time in your life, your progress is going to suffer for it. And if you're someone who takes your gains in the gym very seriously, when your gains start going away, you start losing muscle, you start losing strength, it's going to make your stress get even worse. So again, these are things that people who train, people who lift need to be aware of, and they need to understand, and they need to regulate those things in their life so that they don't make the situation worse. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.